kettlebell swing is an amazing movement to develop power, explosive power in our hips, and get into that posterior chain strength. So most of us these days, we walk a lot, we sit a lot, which means we have tight hips, strong quads, and we often see an imbalance between our glute, hamstring strength, and what we're presenting in the quads. Hence why kettlebell swing is a great movement to include in your practice. I'm going to talk about a few common things to look out for to do right, and some common mistakes people make. The first thing, kettlebell swing is a hinge movement, meaning that I'm pushing my hips backwards. A squat movement, and I have torso a little bit more upright, I'm sitting the hips back, but as you see, my knees are going to come forward here as I'm squatting down. In the hinge, my knees want to stay relatively over the ankles, and I'm going to push back. I'm still going to bend them a little bit. If I keep my legs locked out here in the hinge, I'm not going to be able to get very far. Comparatively, I want to have loose knees. I'm pushing those hips back, and most importantly, I'm keeping a nice straight spine. So a good way to work on that hinge movement, you can be next to a wall here, have your hands kind of in that locked and loaded position, start gliding them down and start pushing your hips back, and I'm trying to find connection to the wall. Once I have that, engage your glutes and comes up, little step forward, same thing, push those hips back, and you're going to feel what it's like to get into our hinge. So that first thing a lot of times I see people doing in the gym when you're doing your swing, so you're squatting, you're hinging. If I'm squatting, I'm going to use more of my quads and shoulders to move the weight as opposed to the posterior chain. So a squat swing is going to look like this. And if you see here, when I do that squat swing, the kettlebell is kind of in no man's land. I don't have a nice connection between the wrists and in the hips. And this is the second thing I want to emphasize when I'm doing my kettlebell swing. It's all about connection. What's moving the weight? Glutes, hamstrings, boom, coming up. So I need to have a nice connection of the wrists to the hips. If I'm swinging down here, often either I'm going to do that squat swing, but even if I'm in a hinge, and my hands are down around my knees, I don't have a connection, I often see people starting to use their lower back to lift, or I'm going to use my shoulders, which is not what we're looking for in this movement. I want this to be a glute, hamstring, posterior chain drill. So how do we maximize connection? It can be tricky because of timing. On the way up in my swing, my hands are connected, hips and hands, boom, they move together. But on the way down, if I start moving my hips back, as my hands are coming down, oh, my hips are already in that back position here when the hands and the kettlebell are going to reach into the back strip. So what I want to think about is as I come up, timing is together. This is the tricky part. I've got to wait for those hands to come back down. It's a split-second difference until I find that connection and push the hips back. I'm going to show you what I mean. So I'm waiting, connected. If I start moving together, I'm in no man's land again. So it's that split-second difference. If I'm coming up, I'm waiting for the belt to come down before I start pushing those hips back. Okay? Another thing that I see a lot of people doing when it comes to their swing is arm position. Sometimes we see these little T-Rex arms in the swing. So even if I have a nice hip connection, right, what's going on here with these arms? We're going to think about straight arms and packing that lat together. This explosive movement in the kettlebell swing, I'm trying to generate as much tension in the body as I can, as much force in the hips and the glutes, explosive power. So why am I going to have some slack in the upper body? The minute I grab that kettlebell handle, I'm going to think about pulling that apart, right? This breaking the bar concept. And if you feel this, I'm trying to split that apart. You see tension through the arms, lats are packing down. I'm going to keep that tension throughout the movement. So I'm going to hike that bell back, explode, lats are staying packed. Full tension throughout, maximizing the power potential. This is how you build a good swing, people. The last thing I'm going to say is how high should the bell be coming? Ideally, in a kettlebell swing, As I said, all the power is here from the hips, nothing from the shoulders. So do I need to lift that bell overhead? Hell no. Okay, there's some other different exercises that you can do for that. I've already talked about one. If you've read my blog post on why the American swing, not a good movement to do. Kettlebell snatch, great for going overhead. But in this two-handed swing, I want that power from the hips. Bell should float to about hip height, or at very worst, shoulder height. Right, you saw my swings coming up here. If you're getting all the power from the hips and the bell is floating up, it means you're ready for a heavier bell. So congratulations, you've leveled up. I hope you learned from this. Put into practice some of these tips I've talked about. Make it a good swing, people. Have fun.